Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We have got a brilliant topic for you today. You'll have signed up for using the AI momentum to drive the data culture agenda. And I think this is a topic that lots of people see all over social media, something that we're all really passionate about, and I can't wait to dive into. Before I do so, let me introduce myself and our brilliant speakers today. So I'm Sophie. I'll be hosting the panel session that we've got for you today. And I am joined by the brilliant Lou Hutchins, who is Director of Data Culture and Literacy for us at Cynozure, and the brilliant Greg Freeman, founder and CEO of Data Literacy Academy. I know they're really keen to talk to you guys, and I know that you guys are really keen to hear what they've got to say on this topic. Before I dive in, I've got 30 seconds of very, very brief housekeeping for you. I don't think anyone will be new to attending a Teams webinar on here. You can comment, give us your thoughts, give us your opinions as we go through today's content. You can ask us a question. We've got some time dedicated at the end to go through any questions that you have. I'm sure both Lou and Greg would really appreciate being challenged. And all of your normal Teams controls that you'll be used to from sitting in lots of Teams meetings. I can see some familiar faces and names on this session, which means that some of you will have been along to a Cynozure webinar in the past. So thanks for coming back if that's the case. If this is your first time joining us for a Cynozure session, a little bit about us as a company. We are a data and analytics company who support organisations of all types, all industries to fulfil their data potential. So what that means is helping them to figure out what it is that they should be doing with data and AI, and then helping them to build and implement the tools, the processes, and the behavioural changes they need to be able to deliver on those and start seeing real value. We've done this for a broad range of clients. I'll put a few logos on the screen now. So lots of the content that we'll be talking about today will be drawing on our experience of working across a wealth of different industries. I am also super, super excited to have Greg joining us today, CEO and founder of Data Literacy Academy, we've recently partnered, so Data Literacy Academy and Cynozure. Greg, can I ask you before we dive in, can you give us a little intro to Data Literacy Academy and what this partnership means for any data leaders out there looking at this topic?
100%. So Data Literacy Academy kind of is quite Ronsil in its title. Does exactly what it says. We specialize in data and AI literacy, primarily for the wider business, so people who wouldn't consider themselves data professionals. We do also teach soft skills and business skills to data professionals as a bit of a side piece to our core programs. But we do everything from live online education, in-person education, and we've just released our on-demand self-service platform, which can go across the whole organization to bring everybody on the data and AI literacy journey.
Amazing. Thank you. So I did promise only a couple minutes of housekeeping. We are super excited about this partnership. I think it means lots of really good things for anyone out there looking to use the AI momentum to drive a better data culture, to have more impact with their data culture and literacy programs. And as always, we're super happy to chat through any of that at the end. However, I know that we have lots of thoughts and opinions on this topic in the room. And I thought that we might start, I am going to figure out how to stop sharing this in a second, but I thought we might start, Lou, by talking about this widespread curiosity about AI that I think everybody listening to this will have seen for themselves in their own industries. How do we harness that curiosity and build it into lasting engagement with data? I'm going to ask both of you your thoughts, but if I come to you first, Lou.
Yeah, of course. So I would say that this very much has become a hot topic. Everybody is talking about AI, and I think it's fantastic to think about how we can maximize the use of it within organizations. But I think that everyone is rushing to really identify where that AI innovation can come from without necessarily necessarily always thinking about what are the capabilities that need to sit behind it. And that's why I think we see a huge opportunity to really reset the data agenda within organizations so that we can actually maximize the use of that AI to its full potential. And that's everything from really thinking about, have we actually taken people on the data journey across the organization? Do we understand where the value add around data is? And ultimately, are we taking accountability for the quality of the data within our organization? Because in order to get those things right, you really need to be investing in data capability first and foremost so that AI can really fulfill its full potential. So a very hot topic, and I think a real opportunity for us to kickstart some of the conversations that we're having more broadly about the data strategy and how it's laddering back up as a strategic enabler into the business.
I love that. And I love that it comes back to strategy. Greg, you see things from a slightly different perspective in and around your work in data literacy. What are your thoughts on the topic?
So I think, and I know that the industry hates this to be said, like people who work client side, but I honestly think AI is the golden ticket. Like I think right now it's the golden ticket to getting people to care at a senior level, the wider business, people wanting to. I love the way that Lou said resetting the data agenda. I've been doing a lot of thinking and looking into at the moment the Gartner hype cycles. We're not a massive like Gartner advocate in any way, but they obviously do have that lens on the industry. And I think we can all say now we're fairly safely through, or not safely actually, as the case may be, the hype cycle around data, and that being the thing that's going to guarantee delivering value for the business. And that means that a lot of people at leadership level and a lot of people at a kind of front face, cold face of the business are just quite frustrated by the topic of data. AI much more still in the midst of its hype cycle, and therefore bringing that to the forefront and allowing you to pull those two things together is probably going to be the way, as Lou says, that you're gonna reset that agenda. So I see a lot of companies at the moment for different reasons, because firstly they've had to take a very kind of defensive governance stance, trying to roll back the talk of AI. I think ultimately, if you can do anything in your power at the moment to at least allow AI to be enabled in some sort of way within your business, whether it is just simple generative AI, use of Copilot, things that people can see the value of every day, or even those bigger programs that are actually going to deliver value. I think you've got to lean in, and I think you've got to be opening the doors, not trying within all your power to close the doors. So yeah, for me, it's a massive reconnection with the potential value of what we do.
Brilliant. And how, just to build on that, Greg, because I'm really interested in this, how would you suggest to a data leader that's in an organization, that's really on the hype train of AI, like how do they illustrate the connection between data and AI?
I think the way to do it ultimately is most of your people are not going to understand AI. They probably don't understand data either, but they're not going to understand AI. That's the thing that's very true. So you've got to take time with them. You've got to spend the time to bring them on the journey, and all those things Lou mentioned about this being the platform for artificial intelligence, for having the right data quality, the right information, the right access, the right movement of data within the business. You've got to take the time and spend the effort to help them understand why that is relevant, because AI isn't a silver bullet. Silicon Valley is built, right? And I'm from a startup world, and Silicon Valley is built on venture capital money that sells the dream of the next big hype cycle. And therefore, they've spent an awful lot of money on data already. They've probably already started to spend a lot of money on AI. They don't see how all that money that they feel they wasted on data is now going to empower AI. And you're not just going to get them to magically understand it, and neither is the software industry. So you're actually going to have to train them. Like if I'm thinking a lot of what kind of Lou spends her time doing, those executive one-to-ones where you're really, really coaching leaders through where the value is. That's an unbelievable way of giving them the space to understand and feel confident with it. And that's how they'll link it back to all the things that the data industry cares about.
I love that. And Lou, if I come back to you, because Greg is right. You spend a lot of time in a boardroom talking to execs about these topics. Like, how do you get them to go from this interest and excitement around AI to seeing what data's potential is for them?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And actually, sometimes you get a lot of excitement because there's an expectation that this can be the next biggest innovation. This is what we should be going after. And actually, it's going to save us loads of money and we're going to drive cost efficiencies and it'll increase our revenue. Sometimes that is the energy. Sometimes the energy is very different, and there's a real nervous cautiousness about it. And as Greg has kind of alluded to, you get the flip side of that, which is we're mandating nobody is allowed to use AI. And I end up having conversations in both camps. And I think the first and foremost is let's get excited about the art of the possible, but let's get really clear where the value add is for AI and not just do AI for AI's sake. And sometimes that is about having that proof of concept, test and learn, agile mentality, getting people to dip their toe in and understand where those opportunities are. And I know for me personally, I am constantly building out my understanding of how and where and why I would use AI. The other side of the coin is when you've got that nervous exec leader, and I had a really kind of kooky conversation going back in June with an executive CTO who basically turned around and said, is it actually a thing? And I was like, look, to be honest, the train has left the station, and you mandating currently that your colleagues are not allowed to use AI is only going to create a load of kind of secret squirrel doing it in the background, not admitting they're using it. Where we want to get to is being really transparent as a leadership team that we advocate for it, but there are policies and processes and guardrails around it. And these are the areas where we'd like to explore the use of it and how you do that appropriately. And for us, this is why we see this huge opportunity to then link it back into that data connection and that data strategy. Because in my mind, if we get people to understand the power that data management and data quality plays in AI, then we can start to kind of bridge the gap of where the two come hand in hand. So very mixed experiences from a leadership level. You've either got people jumping off into the future, thinking about all the innovation they can do, but not really thinking about have they got the tools and the foundations and the mandates and the policies to do so appropriately, and where really is the value add. Or it's very much the other way, and it's like, we're not allowing anyone to use it, which is also fundamentally wrong, because people will do what they need to do in order to make their lives easier. And the danger zone then is you have limited control about what information is being put where. So getting that sweet spot right is incredibly important. And as Greg said, we've got to take leaders on that journey with us and educate where it's relevant to educate in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you both, go on, Greg.
I was just going to say, I'll give you a very, because I think Lou's first point there about, I think we all know it, but it is going to happen whether you like it or not. There's no point pretending it's not. And even in a business of our size, right? So I'll give you a transparent view into our business this week. We're about 80 people. We have, I'll call it enterprise. It's not true enterprise. Enterprise Gemini, enterprise chat, and enterprise Copilot. And even this week, I've had to basically put a message out saying, you've got to stop using Claude. We haven't paid for Claude, which means it's going into a kind of open system. So if that's happening in a business like ours that is very data and AI literate, is very understanding of data governance, already has 3 tools fully rolled out to it, it is definitely happening in your businesses. And there's no point you pretending it's not. Like, you can't govern that. You've just got to do what you can to give people the support to actually make it happen, and that is things like enterprise licenses. So yeah, I think it's if it's happening in our business, it's definitely happening in everyone else's.
It's happening everywhere.
Absolutely. You've both talked about there, when you're talking about strategy and exec appetite, you've both talked about this link between literacy and leadership. Greg, why do you think data literacy is so essential for a successful AI adoption?
I think part of it comes down, and that link between leadership and literacy is very, very key, because if we always come back to this little mini journey of the industry always expects people to just use the stuff that's thrown at it. And actually, and you can think about this in any kind of way, any element of your life, if you don't trust something, you're not going to use it. And if you don't understand something, you're not going to trust it. So first you have to understand something, then you'll trust it, then you'll use it. Which means that if you've got either leaders or just the general population of your business who don't have that core understanding, what I would consider literacy for data, for AI, they're not going to start finding the benefits downstream by using it. So, I think the less you take your leaders on the journey, the more you kind of hope they'll get it. The more they're just going to put barriers up because they don't understand it. And one thing that is very key is that people who are directive by nature or more likely to be a kind of red personality type, if they don't understand something, are less likely to allow everyone else to embrace it because that goes against their belief system around probably closer to a kind of autocratic society or that autocratic business workplace or those types of things. So what we've got to do is mean that if everybody can start to understand it, we will get to that usage. But for us, it goes understand, trust, use, not just use and hope everyone goes on the journey with you. So yeah, I think that's why literacy is so important.
Yes, a really good thing people can remember and take away, isn't it, as well as a mantra. Thank you. Lou, you've also talked about, well, you've given us an example of the sort of role a leader shouldn't model when we're talking about AI. Have you got examples of like how leaders can model
Yeah.
the right adoption and literacy levels?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, your leaders should set the tone, right? So if they have good understanding of data and the power of that data, and it's really seen as a strategic enabler and an asset to your business, then you will just know that, you will feel it because decisions will be data led. There will be a significant link that data is seen as a strategic enabler in the business. There will be clear KPIs and objectives. And I think you almost want to be demonstrating that behavior and setting that tone alongside thinking about how you unlock the power of AI. So I think the first thing is leaders really demonstrating that they get the value of data, because if they land and really understand that and are literate in the use of that data on a proactive strategic basis, then they're very likely to understand that the data quality that they have in their organization will be able to then unlock the power of AI. So the two very much go hand in hand. You've got to have literate leaders who really understand the power of their data, that have gone on a journey. And what we often recognize, and whether that's working with Data Literacy Academy or spending time with leaders in workshops, is that quite often there is nervousness about raising your hand and saying, actually, I don't fully understand what you mean by that, or actually, we're not probably measuring that through a data lens at the moment, and maybe we should be. And you're going to have that same energy at leadership level around AI. So ensuring that you're taking people on the right level of journey around the power of this stuff is really important. And I think ultimately, what you want is leaders to demonstrate to the organization that AI and data can unlock huge value. And it's not just about analytical jobs doing this stuff, it's about setting the tone at the beginning. And that also really requires you to be really clear on the processes and policies and guardrails around AI, knowing where you can add value with it, and actually identifying for your business where those use cases are. And again, that doesn't always come immediately to mind. So when we're speaking to leaders, they might be saying, AI is really important to us, and we'll be like, fantastic, why? And that why is where they stop, because they haven't really thought about how it's going to solve business problems. And our job, of course, is to help tease that out and find those golden opportunities of where we believe it can. But I think leaders set the tone. So that literacy and understanding piece is so important culturally to how your business embraces not only AI, but also the data that you're trying to use and validate across the business.
Brilliant. I think that you've both touched on really good advice there, especially when somebody is thinking, hey, you know, like my exec are really interested in AI, like we could use this to kind of flex our muscles in data and start doing better with data and achieve some of these use cases. I'm really conscious there's probably people sitting on this call who are, you know, preaching to the converted there, and they've already seen the appetite for AI and thinking, here's an opportunity for us. Are there any pitfalls that you think data leaders need to be aware of and avoid when trying to build a data culture off the back of AI? Maybe if I come to you, Greg.
Yeah, I think so. You used an absolute beauty of a phrase in a conversation recently, which is the AI theatre trap, which I'd never heard before. But like, really, like this idea that AI is the theatre at the moment, and we're all just on stage presenting the things that people want to hear. Um, I also am sorry if anybody's seen the short clip on LinkedIn of me in the last 24 hours and feels therefore like I'm repeating myself. But I feel like one of the mistakes we are starting to make, and even though I know it's not the truth, even I'm starting to be like, maybe everybody is into AI and maybe I'm wrong. Actually, like one of the worst things about any industry, it's not just the data industry, but I think the data industry is a massive victim of it, is that it is an echo chamber. You talk to people in the data industry, they will tell you repeatedly how important this stuff is, how excited they are about it, how it's going to change the world. But actually, most data offices only engage with their own people and probably the next 15% of people in the business who actually care about this stuff. So, one of the things I've always found really funny is that we all, as the data industry and as data offices, complain about, oh, the people in our business don't know enough about data, they don't know enough about AI, they don't care about it enough. They're actually the people that care the most in your business. It's the other 80% that you never hear from that you should be more worried about. And I think we create this echo chamber and in line with the Gartner hype cycle and just the exec hype cycle at the moment, the whole trap is believing that the whole business wants this and is ready for it. Because you're going to design an AI strategy, you're going to design AI products around the concept of them being adopted at 100%, and you're going to get a real kick in the teeth when you find that actually all that ROI you've promised doesn't get delivered because you didn't get it adopted beyond that kind of 5% in your own data office and 15% that actually has the enthusiasm for this right now. It's that silent majority who deliver the other 80% of value, who are still there on the front line of the business every day, that are going to cost you. So I think if you try and build your culture just off the hype, you'll lose. If you think more candidly and more openly and more realistically about that other 80% and how you're going to engage them, that's probably how you're going to fix this. And yeah, that's something we see every day, that you just cannot pretend the 80% isn't there, and you can't get caught up in your echo chamber.
What would you do for that 80%, Greg? How would you engage them?
So I think like Lou and I have very similar feelings about this. It's just a bigger change management process. It's not just throw another tool at people. Honestly, again, I say this too many times. If technology was going to solve the data and AI problem, none of us would have any problems. Because I know for a fact everybody sat in this room watching has spent plenty of money on technology to try and fix that problem. Ultimately, we have to start thinking beyond the technology, beyond those IT conversations, and beyond the next silver bullet system, and thinking how are we actually going to build a framework for change within the organization. We use the ADKAR model, which is a really nice model for change, very common within change functions now. But actually, how are we going to start promoting data in a way that resonates with the person who's on the front line of the business? I mean, we've had a really good example of this recently. We've rolled out the on-demand platform, the self-paced platform, to a whole business where they're probably like 80% white collar knowledge workers, 20% blue collar. And it's just been a very different response from the 20% of blue collar people. Like they just do not see it as that relevant to their roles. And therefore, what we've had to do is curate a new learning path specifically for blue collar workers on the on demand platform that speaks very much to those very specific problems they face when they do have to go and paint somebody's wall in their house and it's not like they've not got the products there. Those types of things that make it super relatable. And you have to know that as a data office. You have to understand what their world looks like. There's Laura Fernside at West Yorkshire Police is actually a really good example. She works works in IT, but she fully understands the life of a police officer. And therefore, when she speaks about it, she's able to build all the right use cases and speak about it in the right way. That's how we've got to win the hearts and minds. You can't just hope they're going to hear the words and come on the journey.
Love that. And you use that really good phrase, the AI theatre trap. I think that probably does exist in boardrooms, Lou. Are there any, well, I know you'll have thoughts on this. What are your thoughts rather than do you have thoughts on, what a real impact is from AI versus what could be deemed a superficial impact from AI?
Yeah, I think what you're going to start to see, and I think what we're seeing already, is lots of kind of vanity projects that kind of jump around all over the place, pop up because people think it's something fun to do. But I've written down actually on a piece of paper to remind me to say it, like really, it needs to solve real pain, which is what Greg is completely explaining in that culture shift piece. Unless we are really demonstrating the value add it has, whether that is driving a cost saving efficiency, whether that's driving a better customer experience, whether it's resolution in a speedier time frame, it has to be something that solves real pain. And I think, at the end of the day, people buy into two things, something that gives them pleasure or something that solves pain. And ultimately, I think we need to spend more time. Somebody used the analogy the other day, and I absolutely love this. We talk about people being data literate. How do we take them on that journey? Are they AI literate? What we don't often do is flip it on its head and say, how business literate are you? How much are you building relationships across your business with your stakeholders and really understanding their pain? What do they need solved for? Because ultimately, when we think about changing culture within organizations, it's the hardest nut to crack. You can read many a Harvard Business Review on culture shift. It is the hardest thing because you have to change the hearts and minds of people. And the only way that you do that, and Greg landed on this point beautifully, is by making the message really relevant to your end audience. And if it's not really relevant, it's not going to resonate, and the so what doesn't land for them. And unfortunately, and this is the bad news, but this is why we spend so much time in the culture space talking about change and transformation, it is not a one size fits all. Bad news, guys. We have to think about every stakeholder, pivot that message so we land value and we solve individual pain. So that we're really thinking about actually, this is this function's objectives. This is how data and AI can help them, not at an enterprise level. You might have some enterprise methodologies. You might have an enterprise vision of what you're trying to do with data and AI, but unless you're really clear by function how that's going to serve them, help them, because ultimately you're going to ask them to operate differently, get off their current hamster wheel, change their operating processes, maybe change the operating model, the org design. If you're really thinking about driving a transformational shift in data and AI, you've really got to think about that end individual and making sure that message lands. So I think leaders have a huge part to play in buying into that. And I think we have a huge part to play in making sure that that story is really specific. Otherwise, we won't get that shift in behaviours that we're looking for. And what then you see is just a load of vanity projects pop up because we're not really clear on how we're solving pain. So if there's one thing you take from this long answer, it would be solve the pain.
Mm-hmm. I think there's something in there about making it stick. Like when I'm reflecting back on what you both said there, like, yes, you have to change the process, but you also need to embed that process to make it stick. And Greg, I'm wondering if you have examples of like practical steps that businesses can take to really build data and AI literacy that will stick.
Yeah, I think coming back to that ADKAR model of change, one of the things that we've developed beneath that is this idea of conditions that have to be met in order for this to really work. So we've referred to one of the more obvious conditions, which is leadership buy-in, executive longevity on the project, and believing that it is going to deliver what they care about, which I will always say, and to Lou's point there about too many data people just do not understand business. They not really understand why businesses operate the way they do. And all the C-suite care about beyond their own motivations, their own incentives, which is obviously something you always have to consider, is how are we going to get more value for our stakeholders, whether that is shareholders in a private sector organization, whether it's people who are the beneficiaries of charity work, whatever it is, how are we going to maximize what we do to get better outcomes for those people? So if you can't speak in that way, you're going to really struggle. And that's where these conditions come in. So things like, are they going to have the right, and I'm now weirdly going to go back to technology just because it's a good example of another condition, but ultimately, if you're going to get data and AI to stick, there's kind of no point educating people in, for instance, because we're talking about it, AI literacy, if they're not going to be able to officially, in the most important inverted commas ever, officially use Copilot or ChatGPT or Gemini for another 18 months. What's the point? Like, there's no point teaching them Copilot if they can't use it. That's just, again, to lose point, just absolute vanity. Like so many of the projects that are being spun up right now around AI, they're vanity, and that's like vanity literacy is how I describe it. How are we actually going to create the environment, working with HR, working with the technology teams, so that if somebody new comes into the business, they've got a clear path to accessing the right tools, accessing the right data, accessing the learning path that goes with that. All these conditions are needing to be met in order for them to be successful, and therefore in order for the literacy program to be successful, because you can teach people whatever you want, but if they're not actually going to be able to use it, or they're blocked from doing it, it isn't going to be that successful. And that isn't, just to be clear, why I'm thinking everyone should open the doors. I do think everyone should open the doors because it's going to deliver massive opportunity for you. But yeah, there's no point if you're going to overly govern a program, if you're going to overly govern the way that they have to operate afterwards, you're not going to meet the conditions of allowing them to embed their learning, see the improvements, get the dopamine hit of having learned something and then used it. So you really need to think about how it all comes together when you're building the program, not just the literacy part.
Absolutely. Yeah, super, super useful. I also wonder how you would go about measuring success. I know, Lou, you've done quite a bit of this type of work. Like, how do you measure a culture that is becoming more data or AI literate?
Yeah, I mean, again, you could have loads of vanity metrics. I saw something on LinkedIn the other day where someone was talking about, the metrics of ensuring some organizations are data literate. And I'd have to challenge some of that thinking.
Correct. I saw the exact same post and it was diabolical.
You know what I'm talking about, which is, 50 people attended that workshop, or 10 people dialed into that webinar. They are not proper metrics of success. And I think it's really easy when we're thinking about changing a culture that we're like, well, we've trained all these people, tick, that's that done then. We'll wipe our hands of it. You only really get to see the metrics of success when you start to see an organization operate differently. And this is why Greg is also banging that drum about it can't just be about the literacy program. It's about everything that goes around it. It's the whole end-to-end culture. It's the leadership buy-in. It's the leadership mandate that they're going to support AI and data capabilities within the business with the right tooling, with the right operating model. And that might mean getting out of their own way and changing processes and getting uncomfortable to really drive that shift. And in the organizations that we see being brave enough to do that transformational change, it unlocks so much growth opportunity. So there's a whole process to go through, and you will know those measures of success because businesses become far more data orientated in their strategic decision making. The organization is just about data. It's in every single conversation that somebody's having. It's no longer about gut. It's no longer about, well, I've done this for 15 years and so this is the way we'll continue to do it. The conversation becomes much more data led. And I think AI is the same. I think we're really kind of gripping onto how can it solve all of the cost efficiencies and drive change and drive innovation and improve the level of automation. But what we don't talk about enough is the measure of success is then that we should be able to unlock, free up people's time so that they can make better decisions, so that they can be more customer centric, so that they can drive better decision makings across their processes, and that they're engaging in a different way. And I think that's when you know you've got the power of AI. It's like all of us could sit here today and say, as a consultant, our world is fundamentally shifting in the way that I would use AI. And I'm just partway through writing a white paper on this about what does that actually mean. So if I come in as a consultant to support a business with a data strategy, of course I'm going to use AI because it's going to get me to quicker answers, it's going to summarize stuff. But where I can add power is where AI can't. It's in the human-led stuff. It's in the ability to build rapport, drive change, have those conversations at an exec board level that AI can't do for me, but I can do that because I've got more time to spend in front of people rather than writing up the stories. So I think for me, the measures of success are far more inherent in how a business operates, the way it makes decisions, the way it's using data, the way it's using AI. And I think that would start from an AI perspective about being really agile, building some proof of concepts, proving some value, sharing the stories about what's working and what's not. But also being clear with the organisation that change will come with this. This is inevitable. Change is coming for all of us. The train has left the station. But how we use that change to motor ourselves forward and what that means for job roles is where we need to get really clear to ensure that culturally people feel safe within their roles and within their positions as well, because that's the other thing that stops AI moving forward. So a measure of success for AI is that people get comfortable with using it without thinking it immediately means they're going to lose their job as well. That's another very hot topic that comes to mind.
It's really good. And I think perhaps ending on that, the human side that we can bring that AI can't is a really nice place to end. Before we do, I've got a couple of questions that I'm going to throw at you freestyle before we wrap up at 1:45. But quick fire as we conclude, what do you think the future holds for organizations that do embed data and AI culture versus those that don't? Coming to you first, Greg.
I believe they will be markedly more competitive from a competitive advantage perspective. And I believe that they will, I know we've obviously just talked about the psychological safety people in their current roles, but they will just be more efficient in the way they can do things. We are a very data and AI-led business by nature. We hire less people as a result. Like that's the truth of it. Like we are able to get AI and get data and get more entry-level people to do more amazing things because we use AI in the right way. And that's even really there, we're talking about generative AI. That's really before we've even moved to talk about like big things that AI will be able to do to help us measure our learners and the use cases they generate and all those types of things. So yeah, whether it's us or any other business, I expect them to just have a far greater competitive advantage if they do get this right. And if businesses choose not to get it right and choose to lock it all down and miss the boat, I honestly feel like they will. The repercussions for the employees of those businesses will be fairly significant, would be my guess.
Thank you. And Julie?
I think probably just building on, I advocate everything that Greg just said. And I think for me, it is about not only will you be able to be faster, more efficient, step ahead of the competition, I also think that you're creating a culture of adaptability. And that's something that I think we all need going forward. The world is changing at such a fast pace. Getting people to embrace the change through the use of AI and starting to become more data-led teaches them something beyond data and AI as well about resilience and adapting. Because I think the reality of it is change is happening at a pace that we have not seen in a really long time in the business space, I would say. This is a fundamental shift. And I think that ultimately, if we can give people the right tools, emotionally, mentally, physically, to adapt and understand how that AI can help them in other areas of the way that they think about change, I think that can unlock a huge amount of benefit for businesses as well. I would see it as the multiplier. If you don't have it, you are going to be hugely disadvantaged. If you have it and you're clear about how you'll use it and how it will add value, it's going to put you in a really strong space from a competitor edge perspective.
Really love that. Thank you both. Really appreciate your insights, and I know lots of people here do. I've got a couple of questions before we wrap up from the audience. The first will be really interesting and potentially controversial. Do we need an AI strategy as a business, or do we need a business strategy that is supported by and includes AI?
Oh, great question.
Yeah.
Can I go and give my view? I think that would be like saying, do we need a data strategy or is a business strategy enough? I think really what you need is your business strategy. And this is a total win, guys, if you can get this. And I always feel it's a personal win if I can get a board to think differently about data and AI being a strategic enabler. If you can get that cited in your business strategy, that's a win. But that only goes so far. What you want is a strategy that sits underneath it that really brings to life the plan of how that enabler is going to unlock value within your business. So I think that there is a value in really thinking about AI strategically and having a clear transformative plan around it. But most importantly, it has to ladder back to your business objectives. If you are building data strategies or AI strategies that are standalone and you're not really thinking about how does this actually unlock our strategic objectives, you might as well put it in the bin, because ultimately you're never going to get the buy and it won't really land in the right way.
Love that. What do you think, Greg?
Yeah, I think I'm like Lou's made all the salient points really. I think the thing you should be able to do with any AI strategy or data strategy is, if you can't have your corporate strategy on one screen and your AI strategy on another, and basically just be able to highlight. I'm thinking like literally with a pen highlight, but also if it's on a screen, you could comment and say like clearly and directly links to this corporate strategic pillar, clearly and directly links to this corporate strategic pillar. If you can't do that as you go through, you've really not built a very good strategy. And if you've built your AI or data strategy without even understanding your corporate strategy, then you are kind of flawed from the start. So for me, it's everything Lou said, but as a kind of way of allowing yourself to know whether it's an effective data or AI strategy, the ability to actually go through and highlight points that relate directly to the strategic pillars of the business, that's going to be a good way of pressure testing it.
I think also I've just read Dawn's further comment on that as well, which is, lazy solutioning where AI is the magic silver bullet. Oh my gosh, yes, we see this all the time. So I think you are absolutely right in your point here as well, Dawn, that you could make process improvements without AI. And actually it's having the blend of both and being really clear. AI is not always the answer. So making sure that you're really clear on whether it's actually solving a real genuine problem or not, I think is key.
Yeah, definitely. Really interesting question that's just come in, which potentially difficult to answer, is if you're in an organization that has both a lower awareness of what AI could do for them, lack of awareness about the scale of foundational work that needs to happen, and a small budget, what would you recommend? It's hard.
It's the slow catch the monkey, I think.
No, I mean you've got so something that's really worked for us actually, just in terms of like working with some of either our prospective clients or even some of our clients as part of their comms programs, is doing what I just call art of the possible sessions, where you basically allow anybody in the business to dial into them, and you don't talk about AI for AI's sake. You talk about it with very highly relevant applied use cases, and that's all the session is. It's just that this is where it's going to land in your life. This is where it's going to help you make your decisions better or solve the problems you face every day better. And that comes back to that. The business knowledge is needed there. You have to understand what their problems will be and how to solve them. But yeah, those kind of art of the possible sessions are really effective as part of a comms plan.
Yeah. I think that summarizes it perfectly, to be fair. I think it's really difficult. You've got to also kind of work out the best way. This is where stakeholder management is so important, and really understanding what makes those stakeholders tick. So I think, building that enthusiasm, engagement, and I can see that you're kind of saying, and you've got no budget and it's not formally part of your role. My gosh, I think there's a lot of data professionals out there at the moment as well that have just had AI chopped onto the job list, and good luck. So I don't think you're alone in that, but I think, ensuring that we tell the right story, and this is where I think, Dawn was pulling out as well, like AI is not necessarily the silver bullet, because unless you've got those foundations in place, you won't be able to leverage the value of it. And I think being able to tell a clear story of that, and maybe just taking one small section of the business and thinking about where that could add value and tell the story there, build a tiny proof of concept, build out the value, build out the story, and then start to talk about the art of the possible. That can be quite powerful. The other thing I often talk to organizations about, particularly when they're thinking about the level of investment, is the risk of not doing something. So what is the financial risk or the retention risk of customers if you don't invest in this space? So that's another way to sometimes think about it.
Brilliant. I can see quite a few heart reacts to that. So I think that was a good answer, both of you. Thank you. We are right on 2:45, so right at the end of our time together. I know that I'm appreciative that there's a couple of questions that we just didn't get to in this session. However, I would really encourage anybody listening to connect with both Lou Hutchins on LinkedIn and Greg Freeman on LinkedIn. We are always happy to chat in the DMs on a call about this topic. And if we can help you, even better. All that's left to say then for today is thank you so much to both Lou and Greg for your insight and your expertise. And thank you to everyone who joined us today to listen to our panel session. Had a really good time. And I hope to see you on another one in the very near future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.